everyone, and welcome to another episode of HPCritical, a podcast where my friends and I talk all things gaming. My name is Jarrell, and I have a very special guest today. Her name is Felicia, and she's going to tell you all about herself. But first, I want to tell you guys why I have her on here. So, as you guys may know, this is Latinx Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th, and I've reached out to a lot of Latinx content creators and people in the industry just to talk to them, having candid conversations about their experiences in the industry and how they feel about certain subjects that come up that we can talk about. So I'm very, very honored to have Felicia here. So Felicia, can you please tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Hello. So me and Jarrell first met at a little website called WTF Gamers Only, that was
5 years ago? Maybe even longer.
Oh my gosh. I feel like it might be even longer.
Yeah.
Time flies. But that's kind of where I got my start writing about games. And I was there for about a year-ish, on and off. And then I moved on to freelancing and worked for this company called Greenlit Content, where we would do coverage for sites like Prima Games and Turtle Beach, and they even had a little indie website that I was really super duper passionate about called Indie Obscura. Shout out to Morgan, who was also helping me spearhead that, and it was really cool and fun. I was there for about a year or two as a contractor, and then I went full-time freelance. And a lot of my experience is with guides writing. I wrote a lot of stuff that was focused with like SEO in mind, and I did features and stuff here and there, but it was mostly guides writing, and that's kind of how I got my position now, which is SEO editor at IGN.
Yay!
Oh, I also I was also the section editor at Digital Trends for a bit. Yeah. But we'll move past that really fast.
Okay. I understand.
So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm going to be honest, like my journey trying to break into the industry felt very surreal for me, because, I was working really hard to try and break into the industry, as a lot of people do. But there was a point where I was kind of like, okay, I don't think this is going to work out for me, because I'm just hitting a wall. And, as we know, a lot of the people who break into the industry are white and, I
male.
Figured, yes,
also,
white, male, cis, hetero, definitely not me, not us. So it was kind of random how it happened. I sent out, applications, not really expecting to hear back from anybody. And lo and behold, some people did reach back out, and that's how I got a lot of my opportunities. So like when people ask me like, how did you break into the industry? I'm kind of like, I honestly don't fucking know. Fucking luck. I won't say there wasn't a lot of hard work involved, because there was, and a lot of people work really hard to break in. It is a lot of like, working weekends and long hours and contributing a lot of your own personal time. But I loved doing it. It was work, but I also loved it. So. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So also, for anyone who's listening who, I get a lot of people saying that they really love what we do at HPCritical, and like, even my own writing. It is all because of this woman here. So like, I have to thank you specifically on this podcast, because a lot of, what I have been able to do with games journalism has been just from my experience with working with you. So thank you so much for everything.
I mean, WTF Gamers Only was such a magical time. I talk about it with Lee, who's my boyfriend, but I also met him at Full Circle, WTF Gamers Only. And we were such a great group. I don't know how it happened. I'm telling you, it was fucking magic. But when we all got together and we were writing and we were like really trying to bring this site to be something, we just all got along so well, and we were all so passionate about it. And I honestly looked forward to it like every single day, seeing you guys, talking to you guys, joking with you guys, memes.
Yes. Literally best of times.
Yes. And then everyone kind of like went on to do great
Yep,
things. Like
literally.
you started your own website. Grayson is in the industry writing, and
Mm-hmm.
Maggie's a game developer.
Yes, I
Like,
know. I was just talking to her the other day. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love what you're doing." Everyone is just it's been such a great starting point, I think, for all of us to branch out, and it's been really wonderful for me personally to be able to, reach out to people like you or Grayson or Austin or Maggie or anyone, who's working in the industry now. It's been really, really wonderful to have those connections, to just even when we have to talk, like even having conversations like this, because I know a lot of times when a video game comes up, like and I'm gonna get into a little bit of diversity really quick a bit, but a lot of times when like video games come up, I will see something and then I'll have a completely different opinion from someone else who's writing on it, and then as soon as you tweet, I'm like, okay, I know that she feels the same way that I do about this. So it's really, really great to be able to have that outlet,
yes.
and knowing that even though I am not always represented in that space, I know that I have people that are friends of mine who are represented in that space, who definitely have the same type of experience that I will, because I've talked to people before, and we've had conversations where they're just like, and this was one that I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but there was a conversation that I was having with someone who is really well in the industry, who's done really well for themselves, and we were talking about, it wasn't even a video game, I think it was a movie, I don't remember, but we were talking about reviewing it, and the conversation was that I said was that, there are a lot of white cis male reviews out there. And so when a video game comes up or a movie comes up that doesn't have that perspective, it would be really nice to have someone else make that review.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were talking about A Wrinkle in Time at the time. And that person was just like, oh, are you saying that I can't review this movie? I was like, no, I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying your review might be very similar to someone else's that's already reviewed it. I would love to read a review from, a Black woman about this, or a woman in general about this, because I know that their definition of that is going to be different, or even, mine is going to be different. I'm not a Black woman. I'm this gay Black guy in Miami who likes video games. So of course my opinion is going to be completely different from another person's. And I think it's really important to have those conversations and have that type of representation in the industry. And some people just don't get it. So it's really great when I'm able to talk to people like you who we even have, different opinions on things, but I love that we're able to sit down and have these conversations. And I know that you're over at IGN, and I was literally doing a podcast the other day, and I freaked out because I was reading an article and it was one of yours, and I was like, oh my God, I know her. It was really, really cool. So
yeah. And I completely agree. Like, when I was growing up, a lot of the content that I was drawn to was, written or done by people like me. And, breaking into the industry, it's been kind of rough when people bring up like, oh, well, this guy, right? Like everyone knows him. And it's like this really popular white journalist. And I'm just like, honestly, I really don't.
Yes,
and
same.
And it's no shade or anything, but it's just like, that's not what I'm looking for when I'm looking for, reviews about stuff or an opinion about something, because our experiences are totally different. We probably look for different things in the kind of games we want to play. And,
exactly.
I want to hear from people that are more inclusive and are going to consider like, okay, well, I want to hear about like, do you think that this game is worth the money? Do you think that the character portrayals in this game are respectful of the marginalized communities it includes and all that stuff? So it's so important to have that.
Yes. So I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
One of them is going off of exactly what you were talking about, marginalized groups represented in video games. So I know you had some things to say about Cyberpunk 2077 after they did their video of the gangs that were shown off. And I really want to have you just expound on that and express to me how you felt when you saw them. And you weren't the only one, but I know one of the gangs, I don't even remember the name of the gang, actually. I do remember the Tiger Claws, because when I saw it, I was like, wow, that is like And no
Yeah. Oh my
offense,
gosh.
I think that CD Projekt Red is probably going to do a really great job.
Yeah.
But it's just like, damn, the best y'all could do was Tiger
Tiger
Claws.
claws.
Like,
I
is that
know.
really
And
all
that
you
fawn
had?
and then the spot. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
But
Yes. So how did you feel when you saw the Latin group representation in the presentation that was shown?
okay. So like first I was working when that whole thing happened, but I saw my coworker Janet Garcia like, okay, you can always count on Janet Garcia to talk about some bad representation in
Yes.
games. And she was like, oh my gosh, like this group, I think they're called the Valentinos.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, the kind of they were talking Spanglish in the trailer, and that's been a big thing. Like when we see Latinx groups portrayed in video games, they speak Spanglish, but it's not natural Spanglish. It's like clearly written by someone who doesn't know what Spanglish is, and it's unnatural, So they had that. I remember hearing in the trailer, they were like, gangster life, puto, or some shit like that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's clear, they're trying to, they're drawing a lot of inspiration from like Chicano or Chicanx culture. But so often we see that with Latinx representation, it's always like, a Latinx drug lord, kingpin, like, corrupt government official, gang member. Like you never see them portrayed in other more uplifting ways.
Yeah.
And it gets kind of tiring after a while to constantly see like the few instances of representation that we get always circle back to stereotypes or stereotypical things, right?
Every time. Yeah.
Every time. And people will usually come back with like, well, those stereotypes come from like real life and it's not inaccurate and da 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 da. And it's like, okay, stereotypes are typically over exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually not a very accurate representation of what people like that in real life are really like. And, we should definitely want more from games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And, I was speaking to someone about this and they were just like, I guess they didn't understand where the upset was coming from. And so I want to ask you once again, like, if someone were to come to you and they'd be like, well, why, like, how do you feel like they could fix this? Because to them, they just don't see the problem with it. What would you say to them?
I would say, at this point, like, there's just a lot of things. There's a lot of things I want to say that CD Projekt Red is kind of not handling very well with cyberpunk. I don't know why I wanted to say crosspunk, but cyberpunk. And I think that they probably should have reached out to the groups that they're including in their games and have gotten a like the outlook or the viewpoint from those people, so they could have gotten a better, if they're gonna go the gang route, get a better version of it that's not like bad Spanglish and weird catchphrases that are corny and all that stuff, right? Because another thing I'm not ignorant of is that this is supposed to be based on a tabletop game.
Yeah.
So apparently they're taking bits from that, and like Valentinos are actually like a gang in the tabletop game. So. Mm-hmm. So that's also another thing. But I don't know. I've never played the tabletop game. I don't know if they're really like this in the tabletop game, or this is like CD Projekt Red's spin on the Valentinos. Yeah.
So, and just one more question about this. So, would you be okay if, you'd be okay with there being, because there are, gangs of every race, I'm saying that in quotations because they're a gang of every race, you would feel better about it had it been portrayed in a better light, as in, like, had it not been, the Spanglish, the crosses on the foreheads, like the over-exaggeration, you would have felt better about the situation?
I would have tolerated it more, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm more on the extreme side of the spectrum when it comes to representation. I know a lot of people aren't, a lot of people are okay, like just seeing just being represented in the game,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Where I'm kind of the mind of like, I'll be honest with you, I have no interest in playing Cyberpunk because of that.
Yeah.
And and from other things that I've seen, like, the whole like transgender thing that happened.
Ooh, yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of things about this game that I'm kind of like, don't get me wrong, like I love the work that CD Projekt Red has done in the past, like The Witcher's fantastic, but that was a white story done by a very white developer.
Yeah.
So of course they're gonna get it right. Of course they're gonna kill it. Where in Cyberpunk we have all different types of marginalized communities, and they're kind of I don't know. The representation there isn't that good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's so funny that you say that because I'm actually the same way. So one of the games, I still haven't played Spider-Man. I talk about this a lot. I still haven't played Spider-Man yet. And I was going to play it eventually because when it first was announced, I was like, oh, okay, cool, Spider-Man on PS4. That's probably something I'd be interested in. But then as soon as I found out that it was just, white Peter Parker again, I was like, okay, I actually don't care to play this game anymore.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh, yeah, no, it's really, really good. Like, it's really great. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it eventually because I do want to play it because, I know it's a really great game, but I was hoping for something new. I was hoping for a Miles Morales story. So then when I found out it was just Peter Parker with Miles Morales, I was like, I have lost a lot of interest in this title just because I feel like I've played this before. I've seen this movie a million times. I've done this over and over. And the same thing actually happened to me with Star Wars. Oh my gosh, what is the
Jedi Fallen Order?
Yes. So the one before that, and I just talked about this too. The one before that, they had Janina Gavankar, and I was super excited. I was like, finally, put a woman in the front of this game. That's super cool. And then when I found out they were making another one, and it was going to be canon for the Star Wars story, I was like, okay, I might be able to get into this. And then having the opportunity to do something, but then repeating yourself with another white guy, I was like, oh my gosh, why do you guys do this? Like,
and I remember the explanation they used was the most disappointing for me because I was like, okay.
I don't even know what it was. What was it? I literally just cut off from the game after that. I was done.
Yeah. So I remember distinctly because it was like a headline I read and I clicked on it and I'm like, this can't be true. And because it was the most wild headline, and it was like, I guess somebody had asked them, oh, like, why didn't you like go the route of like another female protagonist like Rey? And I guess a developer from that team was just like, oh, we didn't want to do that again because we already have Rey. And I was just like, what? I was like, wait, I did a double take. I was like, so you're just gonna give us like the millionth white like male pro-tag?
Yep.
Because that makes
sense.
This
time he has red hair, don't forget. So, he's so different now. Yeah. It just I'm sorry. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No. You're good.
So the next thing I want to talk to you about is when companies, I guess, try to do that. So I'm going to talk about Ubisoft. Ubisoft. How do you say it?
Ubisoft. Okay. Ubisoft. I say Ubisoft, but I've heard people say Ubisoft.
I literally end up saying both, so I'll probably say both in this podcast. So I want to talk to you about them a little bit because I think a lot of times they'll make games that are supposed to be really big and are supposed to tackle certain issues, but then they kind of fall back on them in the process of creating the game. And most recently we saw Far Cry 6.
Yes.
And I did not know this, so forgive me. I literally found out because of your tweets. I did not know that Giancarlo Esposito was only black. I thought that he was a mixed actor. So I totally want to delve into this a little bit because when I found that out, I was like, damn, y'all really couldn't find another Latinx person to play this character. Not saying that the guy isn't great, but I feel like he's been so typecasted in that role that I honestly thought that he was of Hispanic descent. So how did you feel about that reveal, especially seeing what Far Cry 6 is supposed to be about? Like, how did you feel about all of that?
So I recently found out about the whole Giancarlo Esposito thing because I was seeing tweets from people saying it, and I was like, no, that's not true. Because, we've seen him portray like a lot of different roles before in the past. And I assumed Esposito. I was like,
Same.
oh, Esposito, like, okay, girl, chill out. Let's do our research. So I did, and I found out that he's Italian and Black or African American. And I was like, oh, so he's really not. Okay. That was my bad for assuming by his last name that he was of Latinx, descent. And the Far Cry series is one that really just does a lot of things that I'm not really into. It's always like, it takes exotic locations and it like really fetishizes them and it builds stories off of them. And they're usually not great stories. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when I saw Far Cry 6 and I was like, it's kind of, I mean, it could really be anything, but like I think of like Cuba, I think of like, countries where they've had like dictators kind of really ruin the country.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we're doing this again. We see, we see this kind of storyline in a lot of games so often. I was upset to find out that, Giancarlo Esposito isn't Latinx and he's portraying a Latinx character. Is it as bad as them casting a white guy to do it? I wouldn't say so. I'm just glad a person of color is involved. But it's not ideal for me. If we lived in a perfect world, I would like to have people who are from those groups portray those characters all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely agree.
But I know we don't live in a perfect world, and just to know that at least a person of color got the role is like somewhat of a plus in my book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I did find out that his son, Diego Castillo, he's being voiced by Anthony Gonzalez, and he is a Latinx person, and I think he is the main character. So I'll take that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there were people, I think, who were confused about me and my feelings about that as well, because, I feel the same way as you. I'm always like, yes, put some Black people in your game, people. Like, I'm here for it. But at the same time, I also believe in representation for everyone. And when I was talking to people about that, they were like, oh, but he's a Black guy. I was like, yeah, but it's not written for a Black guy. Like, his experience is not going to be the same experience as the character that it's written for, like he's not lived that. And of course, he's an actor. I'm not saying he's not going to be bad at it. Like, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have been casted, but I do think that the role could have and should have gone to someone of Latinx descent, especially because it's such a heavy topic. So that the relationship of that person playing that type of character is going to be very different from, a Black Cuban than just a Black Italian who doesn't understand that type of dictatorship because they don't have family there or they haven't experienced it. And I'm not saying that he hasn't, because I don't know his life.
Yeah.
But that does make, I think, to me, a difference. And that also brings me to something else that I want to talk to you about. We have a lot of things to talk about. So, did you see the Twitch celebration for Hispanic Heritage Month?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I'm assuming you saw the little video clips where they decided that they were going to put forward Latinx content creators on Twitch. Did you see that ad roll? Okay, and then you also saw the lovely sombreros that they put on the emotes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two things I want to talk about with that. The first one is, and I'm sorry if I upset anyone with this one, but something that I always end up talking about is Latinx representation in media is always very white.
Yes.
And I think that ad roll it was awesome. I thought it was really great. I think when Twitch does feature people for, X month, I think it's really, really awesome that we get to see content creators of color. I personally have found new people to follow. I think it's really awesome, and I'm not detracting from anyone that was in that video. Mm-hmm. But I think people don't always understand race and ethnicity and intersectionality and all that wonderful stuff. And to me, that video was like, damn, this is really cool, but I know there's some Black Latinos and, you know, Latinx people on Twitch that are just not at all in this video whatsoever. Like, did that cross your mind at all? Like, do you notice when things like that happen?
Oh, absolutely. That's probably like the biggest drum I bang on when it comes to Latinx representation, is that we so often forget, as in the media, that there is such a thing as a Black Latinx person, that's an intersection that we do not see represented nearly enough, you know, and I feel like it comes back around to media, right? Like the movies and the shows that we consume, you always see a white Latinx person in that stuff, like sitcoms and shows and like all that stuff. Like they don't ever really show like a Black Latinx person. And that's wild because like Latinx people come in all different shades. Like they're white, they're tan, they're brown, they're Black, like the full spectrum. And you always see the same type of Latinx people. It's always like either a white Latinx person or like a mildly tan Latinx person.
That's it.
That's it.
It literally does not go any further.
Yeah. And that's not reality. And you see it also in Latinx communities. Like a lot of Latinx people just assume that if someone's Black that they can't possibly be Latinx, and that's wild to me.
It's so crazy to me too. Like,
yes,
I've literally seen people Blacker than I am who are Latinx, and I'm like, oh, cool. And then people are like, nah, they, you know, it's all about perception, and people see you and they place you somewhere, and then that's it, and their mind is blown to know that there's intersection between those. But sorry, continue.
No, I agree. And you see it happen all the time where it's like you'll see two Latinx people talking Spanish, and then, you know, you see a Black Latinx person come up and they talk Spanish too, and they're looking at them like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't know you could speak Spanish. And it's like, why wouldn't they speak Spanish? Like, why would you assume that? Like, you know, Latinx people, I think it's an interesting situation for Latinx people. I mean, if we want to get deep, like, you know, we were colonized, and there's Spaniard, there's indigenous blood, there's African blood, and that how we look is representative of that. You get people that look all different types of ways, you know, range of skin tones. And for some reason, we like to pretend that all Latinx people look a certain way, when that's not reality. So, you know, media, I think, plays a big role in that, because people buy into that representation they see in movies. They're like, oh, they must all, you know, look like J-Lo. Or, you know.
It's actually, you know, one of the reasons that I'm very picky now when I watch Black movies is because I am also, you know, and this is just for me, I'm very tired of seeing the same thing all the time. So I'm very specific when I decide to watch something, because I'm like, okay, how is this really going to make me feel? What am I going to be seeing in this? Because I've seen the same thing for like my entire life about, you know, how my people are represented. And it goes with video games as well. You know, I notice when a video game has no Black people in it, you know, and that doesn't always necessarily mean that I'm not going to play the game, like I'm not going to be excited about the game. That's not the case, but it is something that, you know, I notice. I'm like, you know, if I'm watching you know, the DC game that's coming out soon, and I'm like looking at the NPCs, if I don't see any Black NPCs, I'm like, what kind of world is this? Like that like I actually wrote an article.
Reality.
Yeah, I literally wrote an article that was like, have all the Black people just left Gotham? I was like, did they like, are they tired? Like, did they go somewhere? Like, what's happening with that? Have there been any situations where you like have noticed that there aren't any Latinx people in a video game, and it's like, and it hasn't necessarily like, has there been a situation where you've noticed that there aren't any Latinx people in a video game, and has it bothered you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the more I was in this industry, and the more I found my voice, because I entered this industry with like really no voice at all. I just loved video games. I hadn't really thought too heavily about these topics growing up. That I would say that's a privilege that I got to have. But as I got into this industry more and I started thinking more critically about games, I started challenging myself to think more critically about games, and not so much from I'm a fan of video games. It was more of like, how can these games how can they be better? And I've really started to notice all the time in games, like, I love fantasy games. That's something that I love. I love JRPGs, and those genres notoriously exclude Black and brown folks
all the time.
all the time.
All the time.
All the time. And we always get into those conversations of historical accuracy and
bullshit
in medieval themed games, and I'm like, bitch, there's dragons.
Exactly.
Like,
oh my gosh, yes.
Why are we even talking about that? And
yeah,
I notice it all the time now. And I'm at a point where I'm kind of tired of seeing this lack of representation, where it's like, I'm at a point where if I don't see it, I'm gonna say something, because it's hard for me to see people get so excited about something and just glaze over like the glaring omissions in games or the bad representation in it. I just can't ignore it anymore. Like, I can't be excited about something if it's going to misrepresent, the community I'm part of,
Oh, no, I completely understand. For a long time, I was arguing with friends about The Witcher. I still haven't played it. I haven't played a lot of games, but like for a long time, I was arguing with friends about The Witcher because, I was on the train of, damn, I'm not interested in playing this game because there aren't any Black people in it, and mostly, everyone would give me the same excuse, and I'm just like, look, this guy is, from what I understand, fighting some crazy ass monsters. I don't care where it's set. There are literally people of every color everywhere. So I don't find that, enough of an excuse, especially now. And I always bring this. Did you happen to play the Final Fantasy VII remake?
Yes. Yep.
So I always bring this example up now, and I actually love that I can do this. There are a lot of, I think I do think that there are some issues with representation in that game. Barrett is a little iffy.
Yep.
But
the hair, though.
Yes. But one of the things that I do appreciate about that game that I actually bring up now is that when people tell me that, there's a Japanese developer, they can't do diversity, I think sometimes it is as simple as what the team did for Final Fantasy VII Remake. There are a lot of, and there are still some iffy ones, but there are a lot of, Black and brown people in the world of Midgar. And there was a time, I remember I was playing, I stopped the game and I literally took a picture and I sent it to my boyfriend and I sent it to my friends, and like there's this like side mission where you have to save this little Asian boy in this little back row, and I was like, oh my god, look at this. Like, they didn't have to do that,
Yeah.
But it just goes to show me that if you want to make your world real, you know what you have to do, and it doesn't matter where you are from as a developer, you can do it, and it wasn't some like, oh look, here's Black people. It was literally just like, this is the world that they live in, and it was, to me, that is more realistic. Like, Midgar is more realistic because it has people of different races. Like, I don't even know what the Mughal kid, like, I don't even know what his ethnicity was, but I was like, look at this cute ass little brown boy. Like, I'm here for this. Like, even the fact that I couldn't tell what he was made me happy, because I'm like, damn, like there are ethnicities that I don't even understand being represented in this video game. Like, that's super cool to me that there was so much, and it was done to me in a way that was just like, it's just background. So a lot of people might not even appreciate that, but I was just like, oh my god, like, guys, like, look at this, like, and it just really made that game go to a different level for me. And I love using it as an example for whenever someone's like, oh, they're a Japanese developer, so all their games are going to just have Japanese people. I'm like, okay, but look at like one of the most anticipated remakes of all time, and you cannot tell me that it can't be done.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, you touched on something that I think about a lot. And that's like, why is it that when we are represented, it always has to be, the extreme? Like, it always has to be like a caricature of a Black or brown person from a culture, right? Like, we can't just exist in a world without them putting the fact that we are Latinx or that we're brown or that we're Black in the forefront. Like, can we just exist in this world?
Yeah. Like, we just
like,
want to be
regular, there. Literally, we're regular ass people. It's like, I think about this a lot with like Latinx people in America. Like, we're literally just like a lot of other people. Like, yes, we come home and our parents might speak Spanish and we might listen to salsa or bachata and all that stuff. But like, when we're out in the world, we're speaking English. We're, we all have a unique sense of style. We listen to all different types of music. We're all so different. And that's not just for white people, It's for brown, it's for Black, it's for Latinx, it's for whatever you are. Like, it doesn't always have to be about, making sure they know that we're Mexican or
right. It's okay. We don't have to wear a sign on our foreheads. Like, exactly. Let us just be people.
Yes.
So I don't want to miss this one though. So how did you feel when you saw the Twitch emotes? And specifically, how did you feel? Because when I saw them, I was like, they just did this really great ad of showcasing Latinx people that are going to be on Twitch. Like, did you not talk to them beforehand? Like, what happened there? How did you feel when you saw those?
So the Twitch emotes, instantly, I was kind of just like, come on, man. Like, Twitch, this is not their first offense doing something like this, and it's crazy to me because maybe it's because of the people I follow. I follow a lot of Latinx creators, a lot of Black creators, a lot of people of color, people from marginalized communities. I try to make my timeline as diverse as possible so that I can get all those different viewpoints and all those different opinions. And that helps me to be better and to understand those viewpoints and always consider them a lot more.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was just like, you guys really just don't get it. Like, there's literally people out here writing the guidebook for you. And
literally.
You're just ignoring them. Like, I see people tweet these really insightful, these really smart threads about how Twitch could be better at inclusion and how they could do better. Like, with that Twitch emote thing was a prime example. Like, this girl, Kate, that I follow, she's the, like, I think co-owner of But Why Though. And she literally works doing diversity and inclusion. Like, that's what she does her job. And she did this whole long thread about like why this is not good.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's right there, Twitch.
Right? It's right there. It's right there.
But yeah, like, I guess I'll say what the problem was out loud is that, not all Latinx people wear sombreros and maracas. Like, that stems from Mexican culture, and that is something to be celebrated. But if you're talking about being inclusive and you're talking about Latinx as a whole, that doesn't encompass us as a whole. That's part of one specific culture. And it's taking the very superficial aspects about it on top of it. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. That was just, I was talking to Luis Alamilla. He is also going to be on one of these podcasts, and we were talking about it, and he is Mexican, so he was giving me his viewpoint, and I told him, for me, that was just like if for Black History Month, Twitch put a piece of fried chicken in everybody's hand for emotes. Like, to me, that is the same thing, and that is just boiling an entire, ethnicity down to a stereotype. How did y'all feel like this was ever gonna be okay? Like, I don't understand.
It's exhausting. It really is.
Yes, it really is. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about is, do you ever feel as if, when you're writing about video games or when you're working in the video game industry, do you ever feel the need to try to include who you are into any of your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. All the time, really. Like, I wish I had more time to do more features about just like all of this stuff, right? But the gaming industry, it's rough to navigate. It's rough to navigate for a lot of reasons, but if you're part of like several marginalized communities, if you're a woman, if you're part of LGBTQIA, if you're Black, if you're, if you're not cis white hetero guy, anything you have to say in critique of video games is suddenly like you're the worst fucking person
tell
on the
me
planet.
about it.
And it's really hard because sometimes you for me, I'll weigh like, do I want this falling into the wrong hands and getting the death threats and getting the attacks of like, who I am as a person versus getting my voice out there on this stuff. And there's a lot of people who do that and they're fucking brave.
Yeah.
And I want to do more of that, but I mostly because I just work a lot and I don't get the time to, but, anyone who does do that, I feel like it's important to say that they're really putting themselves out there. They're really putting themselves on the line because, the gaming community is toxic.
Oh,
there's no,
yes.
there's no two ways about it. So if you see, a marginalized creator speaking about their experience from a game, like support them, uplift them, because I'm pretty sure there are people coming at them with all different kinds of vitriol and just nasty things. But I definitely love talking about my experiences because I think that just needs to happen a lot more, like overall.
Yeah, there have been times at HPCritical where I've had to specifically sit down with some of the writers and just be like, okay, look, I'm here for whatever you want to put out because I feel that everyone's voice needs to be heard. So I'm 100% here for whatever you put out. And I tell them every time we have a meeting, I'm like, look, I got your back for whatever bullshit comes your way. And a lot of them are always just like, yeah, no, I already know. Like I've been around enough to know that this is going to give me backlash. And that sucks so much to me, like to hear that they're already, aware of that. Cause it's happened to me before. And I'm, I'm just like, oh, go suck my dick. I don't care. Like to me, it's like, it's not a big deal to me. But then I always feel very responsible for whatever we're putting out for people. And I know we had a very popular article for, Overwatch, written by Marissa. And she wrote that I think the title is Overwatch is Losing Its Diversity. And she was talking about how in the beginning, we got Sombra, we had women of different sizes, different ages, and then as the game progressed, we just got a bunch of skinny white women. And that caused a bunch of issues. And I was like, I mean, she's literally just stating facts, that is literally what happened. And of course, her opinion is that, it sucks to see the diversity go away from such a popular title. But that was, one that just blew up and people were like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And then another one that she did, which I thought was actually really interesting. It's titled, Will The Last of Us 2 Bury Its Gays? And that one was one that we had a very long conversation about because basically it's about the trope of movies and video games in which they kill off like the lesbian character as punishment for the character being a lesbian. And I had never actually heard of it. So that was my first time learning about it. And, for her, it was one of the reasons she was afraid to even play The Last of Us 2. And I was just like, when you publish this, when this goes out, like even that title is gonna be something that people are gonna have some issues with. And I was completely correct. It got a lot of comments. It was a lot of hate, but it was also one of those pieces that I think is so strong that it needs to come out, these are the conversations that, I am literally Black and gay and I didn't have this conversation, she is a white woman and she had this conversation. So I appreciate being able to, like I said, have friends that are, having these perspectives even outside of my own. And I was just like, damn, is the game going to do that? Like, what is going to happen going forward with this title? But anyway, since we talked about Twitch already, I'm gonna leave Twitch alone for a little bit. Do you have any? First, I'm gonna do negative. What are some of your least favorite or worst representations of Latinx culture in video games?
Oh man, that's a tough one. So I actually sat down not too long ago and I was like, all right, because I was struggling to come up with a Latinx character I really liked, and it was so hard for me to just think of one. And, you know, obviously I'm very excited about Miles Morales. That's probably
Same.
like, it's like, you know, when the first Spider-Man game came out and they had like him as like a cameo in the game, and everyone got so excited just to see him, and they're, you know, and then they announced that the next game was going to feature him. I was like, oh my God, it's about time. And I hope that game developers are taking notes.
Yes.
Because I don't know what it is. I don't know if they think that if they have like a Black character as the main protagonist that people aren't going to be interested. But look at Miles Morales. Look at the amount of hype that was generated about that.
And we haven't even seen that much. Like, this is all hype generated from very little, like, very little clips.
Very, very little. So I'm just like, where's the reasoning? Like, why? But yes, it hasn't even come out yet, but I just want to say, like, Miles Morales is probably going to be on my list.
Yes.
I really loved Sean and Daniel from The Last of Us 2. I do take issue with just always seeing Black and brown people in struggle stories. That's something that I want to see less of. I want to see more people, like more representation like Miles Morales, where it's like we're on adventures, we're on these great, fantastic voyages, exploring the world and all this other stuff. But that said, that game is so damn good. Like, it is just so damn good. And it really is, if you haven't played it, whoever's listening, like, please set time to play. I think the first episode's free now, like forever. So just play the first episode and at least like see if you like it. But it's so worth it. It's so damn good. And let's see. I guess if we're talking about the worst.
Also, just for anyone, Life is Strange is the game. I think you said Last of Us 2.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it's okay. Life is Strange.
I was still thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Life is Strange. Life is Strange 2. I don't know. Shit. I mean,
no, that's okay.
Yeah, like,
it's a hard question, and it's sad that it's a hard question, but it's a hard question.
It is sad. I mean, Valentino's is definitely on there, even though that game isn't out yet. I don't need to see any more to know. Let's see, Rico Rodriguez, he's like the Just Cause 4 guy. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. Yeah, I don't know. What about you? Do you have?
I don't. I literally, every time I sit down to think about it, because I always try to, every time I'm, talking about things that I want to talk about with someone, I'm always like, okay, how would I answer this? This is actually a question where I sat down and I was like, okay, like, are there any Black characters that I just really am like, damn, like, you were it? And the answer was literally no. Like, and I looked at all the games that I played, and I've just, like, a lot of them don't have Black characters, and sometimes when they do, like, so, I don't know, have you played Detroit Become Human?
No, I've actually, I didn't play it, but I watched the Let's Play on YouTube.
Games like that, I feel two ways about them, because on one side, I'm like, okay, I see the story that you're telling, but then on the other side, when the developers are like, oh no, we're not trying to tell this story, I'm like, bitch, you tell it, like, I see what you're doing, stop lying to me, and like, that's a whole thing. I would have to say, probably, my favorite is going to have to be Miles Morales. Mm-hmm. And mostly because of the fact that he is an Afro-Latino. Mm-hmm. Because of the fact that, I get to talk to you, you're Puerto Rican, I'm Black, we can talk about him and both of us be excited for what he is and what he has coming forward. Same thing, Grayson and I talked about it, and I'm just like, this is so cool that, us brown people can get together and get behind Spider-Man together. Like, that is that is hype levels, like, out the roof for me.
I can't wait.
Like,
I can't wait.
Right? Like, I actually really do love that he is both Black and Puerto Rican, because it's really cool to be able to share that with my friends. But no, I mean, please, tell me if you see any game that has a good portrayal of a Black person, let me know. a regular black person, like, let me know, because I can't even think of one. And
That's
even
so crazy. Well, I was gonna say, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I've thought about this before, like, because me and Lee recorded a podcast not too long ago talking about the same thing, and I was like struggling to come up with like, just Latinx characters in general, and I came across this article as I was doing research, and it was a Medium article. It wasn't even on a Kotaku or a Polygon or IGN. It was a Medium article. I believe it was by Alan Torres, and it was like, where are all the Latinx characters in games?
Facts.
And like, I remember it saying, like, specifically, like, when I try to think of Latinx characters in games, I'm literally drawing blanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just that we don't see it enough.
Yeah. No,
really.
100%.
Yeah.
I was trying to write an article for Latinx Heritage Month, and I was just like, I wrote one, I think, last year, and a lot of the characters that I wanted to bring forward were all from, like, fighting games, and some of them...
Oh my god.
Go ahead.
No, I'm hyping you up. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was like, I guess I just gotta play fighters my whole life so I can, like, see something, because this is crazy. It was literally fighting games and Sombra. Like, that was it. And I was like, damn, this is... And even when Sombra was announced, I was like, yes, give me some Mexican culture. Like, I'm ready for it. Because that was also, for me, personally, that was, like, one of the first times I was like, damn, like, is she the only Mexican character in video games? Like, what is going on?
Straight up. That's how I felt. I was just like, I love Sombra just because, like, I love her aesthetic. Like, it's nice to see, like, a little edgy goth moment. Hacker, like, I'm just like, yes, give me more of that. I want more of that. But also, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something, but I totally forgot. Damn.
We were talking about fighting games?
Yes, okay. Fighting games. Okay. So I actually was going to write a feature about how the fighting game community really has been like a safe space for a lot of marginalized communities, but then, a lot of stuff has happened in the past year that kind of, that's kind of like, all right, let's not write about that right now because this shit's looking kind of wild. But it, like, that, I feel like that plays into it because, yes, we did get a lot of representation in these games before other games were doing it. I see it with fighting games all the time where I'm just like, oh, we have characters like Street Fighters notorious for featuring fighters from all around the world. We have like capoeira fighters from Brazil and, all those different types of fighters. And I feel like that really probably attracted, I can't say for certain, I can only speculate, but I think that attracted a lot of people, people of color and marginalized people because it was just like, it was really dope to just see us in a game, even if it was a fighting game, like
literally, yes. So my boyfriend, I get to brag a little bit. Hope is he's the Flocker for anyone who like follows him. He's the 2013 Evo champ for Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Yeah, so I hadn't been to any like fighting game tournaments or anything, and I went to one with him, and it was my first one, and I was like, damn, y'all literally have people from legit everywhere here, and it was a wonderful experience. There were literally I think I saw someone from like every marginalized group ever, and everyone was just together playing video games, and it was literally like the best thing. So I completely I obviously I can't say for sure, but I kind of feel like when
there's
you
something
see yourself
there.
When you see yourself, you're more excited about what it is that is coming up. I think that's why a lot of us are so excited for Miles Morales. Like I like Spider-Man, but I'm mostly here for this Black Latino, okay? Yes. Like that's 100%, why I'm super
100%
here
100%.
For him. Praise video games, yes, for that type of inclusion. But yeah, just video games is pretty much, that's it. I mean, sorry, fighting games is pretty much the only thing I have that I can think of, Latinx characters where I feel like the portrayal isn't crazy. And even then, you know, some of them can be a little over the top. But, you know, the games are mostly over the top. So I'm not, like, too judgmental when that happens, because you know that's kind of what the game is supposed to be about. It's just when games like Cyberpunk come forward and they kind of want you to, they're too exaggerated. I think like they want you to believe in this world, but then this world is like a stereotypical over exaggeration. Honestly, when I was like, you know, I when I first heard about the Voodoo Boys, I was like, I bet it's just a bunch of random ass black people with some voodoo bullshit thrown in. And then I watched the video and I was like, I pretty sure I'm correct, just based on what I've seen so far. And I was like, damn, like this is how y'all got. And then you know, I don't want to go back to it, but you know, the tiger claws, like guys, like, ugh. Anyway.
No. And then they have the Moxies too, who are like a sex worker group in the game. And I'm like, so you took every marginalized community you could think of, threw them into a gang and put them in this game. Like, literally what it is. All right.
Yeah, no, that's literally it. So another thing I want to ask you is, well, okay, so here's another question that I want to pose to you. Because I know that I feel some type of way about this, but I want to see how you feel about it. When you have basically it's content versus creator. And what I mean by that is a lot of times there are, you know, comic books and video games in which characters are created by, you know, white people that are POC. And then there are some times where you have POC creators who create characters that are white. Do you think that one of those is more important than the other? I'll start with that. Do you think that one of those is more important than the other?
Oh, man. I think...
I know it's a tough question.
Yeah, it's just layered, but... Yeah. I think at a very base level, people of color creators are always more important. Just because we don't see that enough, you know, like regardless of what it is they're creating, as long as it's, you know, not harmful, I think we should definitely uplift that, you know, and I feel like honestly, we deserve it because we've had to deal with white people doing whatever they want. You know,
forever. Yes.
when they make things, right? Like we've had to deal with incorrect portrayals of marginalized communities in movies and shows and games for so long, that I think, you know, let people of color create whatever characters they want, even if they're white. Like, honestly, I don't think they're going to do it any worse than what we're already seeing white people do for people of color.
I mean, yeah. I cannot disagree with that.
So, yeah, more of that. I think that's more important.
Yeah, one of the reasons I asked that question is because, and I know it's layered, but because I actually was struggling with it for a while, I must admit, because there was a point where I was like, you know, a lot of times I think that people don't, aside from, you know, us, I think there are a lot of times when people won't see who's behind the creation. And so sometimes, and I'm not saying all the time, because I'm still, like, I completely agree with everything you said. I think you just put it, like, perfectly. Like, let us, like, we should be lauded for the creations that we're making, because there aren't enough of us making things anyway, right? So I think that is so important, and I completely agree with you there. I used to think that, you know, there are times where we won't see who's behind the creation, and a lot of people won't look up who's behind that creation, and so sometimes the representation may come from someone who is white, right? So like, I think one of the examples I was talking about was when they revealed Riri Williams as the new Iron Man, the you know, black girl, afro, etc. And I was like, you know, I don't know whether we should praise this because there is, we don't have this. So, my niece is going to see Iron Man as this strong 15-year-old black girl who, like, is, super smart, etc. And, like, yes, that's amazing. Like, I think she does deserve to have, that type of representation. I don't think I should, take away from the creator for giving me that. But then also, it's like, damn, I could have given myself that had I had the opportunity,
Yeah.
So then, if I do have the opportunity, like you said, I should be praised for that character, whether that character is something that, isn't necessarily represented. So, like, because I think this, I'm not going to say the story would be better. I probably should, but I'm not going to say the story would be better. But I think the story of Riri Williams would be very different had it come from a black creator. And it could have been something that I could relate to more. But at the same time, I don't want to take away from a white creator for giving me that type of representation, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's always been really tough, but I think you kind of swayed me.
Well, now that you bring it up, so that's a great example. I think back to there was a point in time where they had Lady Thor, and
yes, I remember that.
I remember there was a lot of blowback for that, and it wasn't blowback that I would support because it was basically like a lot of angry white guys that just didn't want to see
yes,
a woman in their comic, in their favorite comic book. But the blowback I did understand that was a bit more nuanced was like, why are we taking characters that already exist and just putting another person in that character's shoes, and passing that off as representation, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a cop out, like if we want more representation in comic books, we should let these characters have their own stories, have their own arcs, I think that I think comic books, they probably don't have a lot of faith in new characters, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
They take, Iron Man has a lot of fans and a lot of hype, so let's just like put this black girl as Iron Man and then we can get more eyeballs on her. But Iron Man has built, I think, a following because he's Iron Man, you know what I'm saying? So to just force this person onto these people, we don't know if it could do great, it could not, I don't really know. But I would rather have seen her as her own character, have her own story, have her own, like you said, have a black writer writing her so that we can really get real representation.
Exactly.
Because that's something I was really interested in the Mulan thing because I love Disney and I love the original animated Mulan, and then the movie came out and I was like, do I want to spend the $30-something to watch this movie? And I found a Chinese critic and they broke it down and there were like all the writers of that movie were white, and you can tell.
Yes.
You can tell because there's a lot of European mystical elements added into this movie. It's not authentically Chinese. There's a lot of things here that just would not have happened if they had given that movie, writers that understood Chinese culture who were Chinese or Asian, So I think it's always important to have writers or whoever's behind a character or a movie or whatever it is, make sure that the writers and those people understand like that culture, or else it's going to come off as inauthentic, or unauthentic. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I get you. That one, actually, I was interested in that as well because, when they were first talking about Mulan, I was like, oh, okay, cool. They're going to have, a full cast of Chinese people. Like, yes, like, I'm down for that. Let's put all Asians on screen. Like, I'm here for this type of representation. And then I, too, found out that, behind the scenes, it was just a bunch of white writers. And I was like, well, why did y'all even, like, what was the point of this? Like, if you weren't going to go all the way, why did you do this? You You should have just like not even gone through with the process if you were gonna, you know, half-ass it. And to me, that is literally like half-assing it. Like, oh yeah, we'll just put a bunch of Chinese actors in here so that people think it is what it is, but, you know, not knowing what's behind it. I was very ignorant to what was behind it until I found out, and I was like, well, fuck. Like, why did you guys do this?
Yeah, like, let us tell our own stories. Like, that's, because, again, like, it always draws back to, like, it feels very superficial. Like, if you're really about representation and you're really about uplifting marginalized communities, you need to put marginalized people in power. Yes. You need to give them the ability to create that stuff without, you know, the lens of whiteness placed over it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really the only way that we're going to get those real authentic stories. Because drawing back to Cyberpunk, yes, there's representation in that game. Is it good though? No, probably because all the developers are, not all, but like most of them, I don't really know. I'm gonna speculate and say they're probably almost all white. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it also, I think, you've just been, you know, explaining things so well. Also, it is easily just, at that point, you know, forced diversity. Going back to the comic book thing, like, it's like, oh, y'all are mad that there aren't any, you know, Latinx people in here? Okay, well, we're just gonna turn this already non-Latinx character into one so you guys can be happy. And now everybody's happy. But it's like, no, it doesn't, it does not work that way. Like, we would like to, like you said, tell our own stories. And it's always been, I just get so confused when people go on Twitter and they're all just like, you know, especially when the Black Lives Matter movement was happening, and they're like, oh yeah, we want to be so diverse, we want to hire, you know, POC. And then I'm just like, yeah, like, it's crazy to me because, like, I guess I'm frustrated because I know enough POC people that are so talented that deserve spots higher up in positions that they're in. And so it just frustrates me to think that people don't even, like, companies don't even do the reach out, you know, like, they don't do what's necessary to find the talent that's there, and then they're just gonna be like, oh yeah, no, we couldn't find anybody. I'm like, bitch, I got 5 people on the list right now that can do a job better than anyone you already have hired and bring diversity to it. Yeah. But you won't even, you know, take the time to search out that type of talent. So, you know, for me, I was just like, when that whole Black Lives Matter thing was happening and all the companies were like, oh yeah, give us your diversity hires, I was like, okay, how long is this one gonna last? And as you can see, it's already over. So, like, it's been just so frustrating.
It's super frustrating. And it's, when that happened, I was like, I was so hesitant to, like, jump on that train. Just Same. Because so at the previous place I worked at, I won't say any names, but they did this whole superficial diversity hiring thing. And it was only for, like, you know, positions that were, like, basically at the bottom, you know, staff writers, you know, editors that really did most of the work on the site, right? But when you looked at the management and you looked at, like, senior editors and all that stuff like that, the executives, they're all white guys. And, like, maybe one white woman here and there, right? And they're the type of white woman that's gonna not challenge them ever, you know? Like,
I know.
They're part of that, like, group think. And that's when I'm kind of like, okay, do I want to advocate for diversity hiring if we're not also pushing for safe spaces in these places?
Exactly. Yes.
Because it can get predatory real fast. Like, are you compensating them enough money? Are you just trying to hire people of color because you can, you know, pay them less, you know? And are you going to provide a place where they're not going to constantly have to hear ignorant, you know, viewpoints from their coworkers because they haven't had to work in a diverse
let's not talk about that one. I have experienced that firsthand.
Yeah, and that's things that they don't really think about. It's like, oh, we're giving them jobs, like we're diversifying our companies, and it's like, yes, but you're also doing it in the worst way because like at my last job, a lot of the people of color left because we were
Yeah.
tired. We were
Mm-hmm.
like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. We don't want to be worked to the bone. We don't want to be underpaid, like, almost half as much as our white coworkers are. So yeah, like those are all important things to consider, and that's kind of where I'm like, I don't know if I want to promote this
Exactly.
mentality of like, let's just hire people of color, get them in here. And it's like, I think we should be a bit more critical about that.
Yes, no, I completely agree. I too was very hesitant because I had people messaging me being like, "Oh, hey, yeah, you can join this, or you can do that, or you should send this person your portfolio, etc." And I'm looking at the people that are suggesting that they want to help, and some of them I'm like, yeah, I totally, like, I can talk to that person, but then I'm looking at the company that they work for, and I'm like, I see what you guys have at the top. And I see what you have at the bottom, and I don't think that I want to be, just thrown in there because y'all want to save face. Like, and it's really hard because I never wanted to, like, I appreciate, like, I 100% appreciate everyone that was like, oh yeah, you should do this, you should do that. And then I would just have to have those conversations like, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'll try and I'll see what happens. And I know that I'm not even going to attempt to talk to this person because like, I already know how that is. And I've also been in situations where they've been like, oh yeah, let's for example say that we're gonna write a piece on being LGBT in video games, but then you pair me with a bunch of white LGBT people. Nothing wrong with them, but that to me is still not diversity. Like, that's diversity to a certain extent, but when I am talking about my experience being LGBT and Black, it is not at all the same as some of y'all who are LGBT and still racist. So like, that doesn't even, like, being put in situations like that don't even help me. So like, I will stop talking about this actually before I get myself in trouble. I'm gonna stop talking about that.
No, you're fine. It's you can only get better by diversifying your companies. Actually, there's a podcast, not a podcast. Is it a podcast? A panel coming out this weekend that I did with a few other people talking about this very exact thing. And it's basically like you have only so much to gain by getting people of color in positions of power at your companies because they can use their lens to see where your company is missing, that diversity that it needs. If you have like marginalized writers pitching these things that require the kind of lens, the kind of sensitivity, the kind of understanding that only a person of color or, a marginalized person from that community can understand or at least somewhat get their head around, that writer's their piece is only gonna be that much better because of it, rather than you trying to, either accidentally or purposefully censor them because you feel like what they're talking about is, whatever word you want to use to describe it, too controversial. It's like, no, this is the thing, we need to talk about this stuff.
Exactly.
And we need people who are equipped to navigate that.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's actually one of the reasons that I won't even lie, I was not looking to start my own website at all. This was not something I was like, I woke up and I was like, yes, I want to do this. It literally came out of, friends of mine and people talking about these topics and wanting to represent them and then wanting me to talk about them because I always felt strongly about it. And I've been very lucky and very blessed to be able to talk to people. Like even that diversity article that I was talking about that Marissa wrote, that was one that we talked about together because, she is white. So she was like, I want to make sure that I'm, we're having these types of conversations. And I think it's just, we've been really, really lucky to be able to have that relationship and talk to one another and be able to really publish pieces like Will the Last of Us 2 Bury Its Gays? Because like, they're topics that are important. that are very nuanced, very specific, and they can be very scary. I won't lie, it's very scary to put some stuff out there sometimes. But that's really the reason why HP Critical exists, because I want to be able to allow people to write what they're passionate about.
I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad they have someone like you.
Oh my gosh, stop.
Spearheading it. Oh, it's so important. It's so important.
Thank you. So the next thing I want to ask you about is, do you have any favorite content creators, developers, anyone of Latinx descent that you'd like to shout out so that we could check them out?
So I do have a list of Latinx creators, people of color, all around important people working on inclusivity and diversity that you should follow. It's a pretty long list, so get ready. I want to shout out Latinx in Gaming, Black Girl Gamers, Can I Play That, Beyond the Bot, Pikachu Lita, The Gay Chingy, Dia Lacina, Kazuma Hashimoto, Ki-hoon, Grayson Morales, Paul Tamayo, Patricia Hernandez, Ash Parrish, and of course my peeps at IGN, Janet Garcia, Miranda Sanchez, and Armando Torres. And I also think it's really important to call out the work that a lot of these smaller websites are doing. I'm seeing amazing things being done at Uppercut Crit. Shout out to Ty, Monty, and Jessica. Very cool people. Diego and everyone at Into the Spine. Natalie Flores, and the work being done at Fanbyte. Kate Sanchez and the crew at But Why Though. And last but certainly not least, my good friend Jarrell and everyone at HP Critical.
Awesome. That's it for me. Is there anything else that you want to bring up before we end?
Now's a good time as any to educate yourself and diversify the people that you follow. There are so many creators out here having these much needed conversations about diversity, inclusion, and equity that are providing this education for free. So I figured I would list some of the people, some of my favorite creators that I watch on the regular that do this. And these aren't people who are necessarily talking about video games, but just overall talking about, you know, issues with systemic racism and things like that. So the Pero Like crew, the Grapevine, T Noir, Cat Black, Shan Boudram. I'm just going to drop that in there because she talks a lot about sexual education, which I think is super important. And these are all people you can find on YouTube. And yeah, that's it. I'm probably forgetting some people, and apologies if I did. But
I know it's a lot to advocate for this stuff, especially in an industry that so often just wants to glaze over it, wants to ignore it, wants to just, you know, love its games and not take it too seriously. It's just a video game, you know, But I think it's more than that. This is media that people consume.
Yep.
Video games isn't a niche thing anymore. Like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And media really does influence our culture. So yes, it's important. Have your fun, but also remember that this stuff matters. So
yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, thank awesome you. It was. I am just so reinvigorated right now after this hour and a half that we've been talking, and like I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like 30 minutes, don't worry, it's gonna be fine, and I could talk to you more. I really could.
Honestly, I didn't even realize it's been an hour.
I didn't either. I just looked at my recording. I was like, oh, okay. But honestly, thank you just so much for, you know, being so open and honest about these conversations that we're having. You know, I truly appreciate it. I appreciate your insight. I'm so proud of everything that you're doing. Every time that I see you, I'm just like, oh my god, that's so fun. Seriously. honestly,
my gosh.
honestly, I wouldn't even like be thinking about any type of game journalism if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much. And like I said, thank you just for being so open and honest about, you know, your opinion and how you feel about how important representation is, because it, you know, it fucking matters, as we both are very aware of. Yes. So thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for
thank
being
you
on
for
this
having
podcast.
me, and yes, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
it was so much fun.
I'm actually going to try to wrangle you and Lee in this one right now. So I am having later on, I don't know when yet, but I am going to have a podcast about being in relationships and gaming.
Hell yeah.
So I'd love to have you both on that one. That's going to be so fun. Yeah,
I can't wait. It's going to be a nice little reunion.
Yes. Oh my god. I need to talk to him. Yes. I need to speak to him. Anyway, thank you again. And thank you everyone for listening. And we will talk to you later. Bye, everybody.